Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the newly announced Wrap Rig VCore 3.1, which as far as I can tell is just like a few little upgrades to the VCore 3. So without wasting any more time, let's take a look at the launch video. So the first thing we can see there is use of Ever 3, which is the latest version of the modular carriage system. Looks pretty neat so far. I've used it on the V-Minion. It does have a better rigidity between the extruder and the hot end, which is really nice. The carriages, the hot ends are a little bit easier to swap. Overall, it's a nice little improvement. It's not like a major, complete quality of life change. It's all very similar-ish design, but lots of little improvements included, so that's good to see. Easy to build. That's going to be an interesting one. It wasn't that difficult to build. It took quite a long time. I wouldn't say it was that difficult to build. Let's see what they've implemented. That frame looks exactly the same as before, although they're missing the electronics enclosure part, which is weird. So maybe that is added in differently. That's not that. It was there. Top to bottom assembly. So if you weren't aware, one of the challenges, I suppose, with building the VCore 3 is just literally the way they had the assembly manual. You'd start building in a non-critical part of the frame, you'd get to the end, and then you're building the most critical part, and then their instructions are like, make sure you square it up. Ever since doing my videos, I've always tried to reiterate that you should assemble it the other way around. So build the most critical parts first, which is where your rails are mounting, because they really need to be square, parallel, all this kind of stuff. So do that part of the frame first, and then all the things after that which don't matter as much and can be very easily compensated for with meshes and skew and all this kind of stuff. But getting the rails not square when you've got a really rigid frame is problematic because it was very difficult to adjust. I know people that literally rebuilt their entire frame multiple times to try and get it square. So this is quite a big improvement, but I wouldn't say the design seems to have changed. It's just the assembly manual is now the other way around, is it? Hopefully it makes some improvement though to the reliability of people getting their frames square and their rails mostly square as well. One thing I'm noticing is they don't seem to have added washers. So all the screws are still just directly to the plates and then through to the frame, and they seem to also still have all the same brackets, which were not great before either. They weren't terrible, they're just not ideal. The frame was a little bit over rigid. I think they could have reduced some of the components of the frame, especially in that electronics area at the rear. There are 4 extrusions there, which in my opinion do pretty much nothing. It would have been good to see that improved slightly, just as maybe a minor cost reduction. This frame, if we look here, this frame is upside down. This is where the motors go. This is where the belts go through the motors. So this actual image in the video, this 3D printer is completely upside down. This is the base and this is the top, because this rail is offset from the top by the thickness of the extrusion to give space for the belts so that the motors sit behind it in a ideally colder area. Oh, they were showing the feet as well, so I guess that makes sense having it upside down. So here are maybe some of the bigger changes. So while it wasn't necessarily a problem that I saw on my printer, it seems like a lot of people potentially had issues with getting their lead screws straight and maybe having some wobble. So it looks like they've changed the kind of entire methodology about doing that. They've obviously got this bracket installed here, which has a bearing and will hold the lead screw in position partly. I don't know how rigid that bracket is. If it's 3D printed, I can't see it being rigid enough to prevent movement of the lead screw. Let's see what else they've done. Definitely starting to see some different stuff going on here. Here we go. So this is a new coupler. And you can see how it's got multiple materials. You've got brass and, by the looks of it, Delrin or POM sections. So those are going to be able to slide across each other in 2 planes. and that will mean that any movement of the lead screw is compensated for in the XY plane while still maintaining good Z tolerance. I mean, that's the theory. Hopefully that works out in the end. There you go, you can see how that would work. So it looks like they're changing the coupler at the base now, because they previously had some compensation, like two like interlocking spiders sort of things on the coupler between the lead screw and the motor. Looks like that's changed to a completely rigid coupler now. I don't know why they don't just go for lead screws built into the motors, not sure. We can see that those base parts as well also look quite different. So it looks like they don't slide on the extrusion anymore, and it looks like there's some screw holes around for maybe mounting enclosure, so maybe they're improving their enclosure system as well. Not sure what this little hole is for on the front. Maybe again something enclosure related, not sure. Oh, missed that. New couplers. Heavier duty XY kinematic. What's heavier duty? So heavy duty, I mean, we could consider plate thickness, the size of the rails. The belts are already 9mm. Looks like here they're going to be focusing on the pulleys. The XY idler area, they're like the printed part, looks a little bit different too. Not massively, just a little bit. So this bearing stack immediately looks quite different. They've had problems with pulleys, they had some slightly bespoke ones. So it looks like they're going from a inbuilt kind of pulley with like teeth on it to the more, it seems more random, but like it seems to be a more successful system of having like stacked flanged idlers with bearings with them. Here we go, ultra robust idlers with much larger bearings. So hopefully it's a more, it also looks like it's probably a closer like off the shelf system. So having more COTS parts could be more useful for those looking to self-source. That's definitely got some value there. Hopefully people have less problems with bearings wearing out, bearings and idlers wearing out, because clearly that seems to still be a problem, hence them trying to fix it still. More options. So EVA 3, here we go, as we looked at the start. We're seeing some of the options here, but there's like multiple cooling duct options for different fans. You can see an enormous thick fan on there. You've got different hot end options, different extruder options. I mean, in other systems you have different bodies for mounting on Cartesian versus Core XY printers. Obviously here you only need the one body, but different cooling duct and hot end options is always useful to have. 4 sizes available, so it looks like we're getting a new size. Yeah, so we've got this new 200mm size, so 200mm cube. That's quite an interesting size. It's obviously somewhere between, well, it's very close to kind of V-Minion size, which makes it quite an odd choice. 250 may have been more common, but they already have 300. I mean, it kind of makes sense. It's a very scalable system because of the way everything's designed. You kind of just shrink the size of the extrusions and everything else just sort of works. Obviously there are some adaptations and complications in there always is, but in very simple terms, it's quite an easy design to adapt to a new size as long as you can get the right rails, lead screws and bed. I think those are the 3 key parts that actually need like different physical parts. Other than that, it's just extrusions. Less is more, apparently. I mean, I'm not convinced that less is more, because in this video, I've got no electronics, no enclosure still. It'd be nice to see enclosure options more available. Quite a nice launch video. I do quite like the music. It's quite upbeat, very nice. So that's going to be it for me today on my thoughts on the new Ratrig V-Core 3.1. Makes it more difficult to say, but hopefully that is reflected in its slightly improved performance, reliability, easier to build, and Z-axis wobbly things. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.